In August 1919, 17-year-old Milton Erickson, he woke up feeling that parts of his body were unexpectedly paralyzed. During the next few days, his paralysis spread, and shortly after, he was diagnosed with polio, a disease that was epidemic and incurable at that time. While he was lying on the hospital bed, he heard his mother talking to a doctor. The specialist doctor told Erickson's mother that her son would not survive until tomorrow morning. He, who had heard these words, tried to persuade his mother to distract her from her grief. But after only a few hours, he lost consciousness and went into a coma. Everyone thought that he would not survive, but 3 days later, he came back to his senses. It can be said that he cheated on death, but now his whole body and even his lips were paralyzed, and he could neither move nor say anything, even with gestures. He practically could not communicate with anyone, and the only part of his body that moved was his pupils. Now he was quarantined in their country house in Wisconsin, and was living with his family and a private nurse in those conditions. The days were indescribably boring and exhausting for him because he had no connection with the world and the people around him. And with the movement of his eyes, he could only have a limited view of his surroundings. But one day, when his sisters were by his side talking to each other, he noticed something that he had never noticed before. As his sisters were talking, Ericson could see all kinds of expressions on their faces, and even the tone of their voice is also indicative of different meanings. For example, one of his sisters said, while talking, that yes, I agree with this issue, but the tone of her voice and the grin she gave said that she would never agree with this. Now he paid more attention to people's signs and symptoms. It's as if he found an exciting activity in the heart of this dull situation. For example, in one day, he was able to identify 16 types of saying no in the conversations of those around him. Each of these no indicated different degrees of the speaker's opposition. He was also able to find clues in the delicate movements of people's heads and faces, because Ericson could not participate in discussions and conversations. His mind is immersed in observing details such as hand movements, tone of speech. The raising of eyebrows and other minor changes had become people. He could notice that when his family members come to him, the pulse of their veins beats faster. And this meant worry and concern for their thoughts. He, who was imprisoned in his bed, tried to guess in the least possible time what is the desire and intention hidden behind everyone's behavior and speech. Ericson seems to have found another way to communicate with people during his disability, a second language that people sometimes reveal their depths through it without even knowing it. And Ericson also became more proficient in the second language day by day. And it was as if he could read other people's thoughts. He who was able to bypass death once, this time also, after a few months, he was able to overcome his paralysis a little. And by chance, he regained the ability to move his limbs. Contrary to what the doctor said he could no longer walk, Ericson was slowly able to feel the muscles in his legs. And after a while, he was able to walk on his feet. Now he was cured and wanted to continue the hobby he had found in his paralysis more seriously. Therefore, he decided to study medicine and psychology. And finally, in the last years of the 1920s, he was able to enter the field of psychiatry. He quickly developed a new method that was entirely the result of his own discoveries during his time as a paraplegic. And at that time, he was at odds with all the psychiatrists, because the conventional method in psychiatry was to pay attention to words, and they encouraged clients to talk about their lives in childhood in order to reach the patient's unconscious. But Ericson believed that should pay attention to the client's body condition because he believed that words are meant to cover and hide the inside of people. He looked for signs in his clients so that he could identify their internal tensions and problems. And Erickson's motto was observe, observe, observe. And one of the tasks that was especially important for him was walking. He could understand the type of personality of different people from the way they walk. Therefore, in his office, he had placed his desk at the end of the room so that when the clients enter, he can see their departure and compare their changes before and after the session. During the following years, his powers of observation developed so much that he was even able to understand the mental state of people from the pattern of their breathing. At first, because of Erickson's special power in diagnosing and treating the sick, he was called a fortune teller and a magician, and some even believe that he had supernatural powers. But the truth was that Ericson was able to discover the second language of humans, and it was so that Milton Erickson became the founder of hypnotherapy and then one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century. Thank you for watching this video. And lastly, like Ericson, try to learn the second language of humans.